Santa girls. I was so impressed with your last two newsletters that, I mean, I keep looking over here. I don't know who actually writes it or puts it together.
Awesome.
Yeah, but standing up on that, opposing Senate Bill 195, that's leadership. And you are making that happen by working in the community, saying why that's important. So Senate Bill 195 was putting a moratorium on walkable streets here in the city. And the city's responsibility, direction, guidance was state. And I just wanted to put that out. We haven't had that kind of leadership in the past, so thank you.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Sorry, sister.
Same.
Should I just wait?
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, the city sat down for negotiations, and then in the hearing, I went up to the Hill for that, and then the city kind of didn't say yes or no whether they supported it. That was a little bit disappointing to me that they didn't really take a strong stance on it. And now it's back in the House, and they've basically gone against all the compromises that went into substitute 5. So I guess this is more of a comment than a question.
Well, I appreciate that.
We're back to square one, if not worse. Now, at the end of this whole process, we'll elect who we have.
I mean, one thing about the legislature, multiple avenues and multiple access points. What's going on all the time on the floor, in meetings, and outside meetings. So it's not just inside the hearing that those things are happening. It's a moving animal, you know. But I'm hearing you, and I'll be sure to share that.
Yeah, I guess I realized too that a lot of the things when stuff comes down from the Hill, it's not really a true faith negotiation because they have more power in the city. But yeah, I just felt not taking a stance on it. And the other committee members took the city's response as a reason to go ahead and pass it with an overwhelming vote, despite a huge opposition in the hearing. The rest of the city.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Bryce?
Yeah.
Thank you, Bryce.
I think they're voting on that on Friday, and you can still write a letter to representatives before.
Yeah, it's certainly right. So I mean, sometimes they put those bills off that they want to get to you for a reason that they want. But you can't ever take that for granted because they can be uncertain. But in a nanosecond, can make a motion to circulate. It's unfortunate.
That's it. Sorry.
No, that's a good point. And back to your point too, which I was just trying to reinforce, like Grant is your state legislator here for this area. He is your legislator, will use that information like your letter and use that on the House floor in opposition to that legislation. He gives him the grounding, the support that he needs, backing, being reinforced and backed up from his local community council as well. So, with that, there's also, depending on how that legislation goes, there's reconstruction on 100 South. And that's on University Avenue from 1300 East to the North Campus Drive. So you know that pothole area that's all the way up the curb going up to Primary Children's Huntsman Cancer Institute. That's going to be repaved, reconstructed this May. So they're trying to do it with timing during the university's their spring semester, and hopefully have it completed by the beginning of the fall semester. They're taking out the existing parking on the north side over on the putting in a sidewalk there, and then widening the south sidewalk on the south side. So it'll be 10 times nicer. Traffic will only be going west during the construction. You can't drive east on that road. We primarily used for emergency services, so I'm just trying to get that information out now, give you more time to plan, prepare. We've had a lot of changes in the city, you know, Kristen Riker, our director for public lands and parks, has retired. We have a new director as of last night, the city council confirmed, Kim Shelley. She's from the Department of Environmental Quality. Worked with Dave for over 20 years. She's the executive the last 4 years, so we're excited to have her in. And then last night, watched city council meeting or participated. We had well, I gotta step back just a little bit because giving public service is often thankless. And I want to give some thanks and appreciation to Chief Mike Brown and Kristen Riker. You know, they, for 33 years, put your service as a police officer, and the last 9 years as chief of police. There's a lot of thankless days that goes into that profession. So I just personally want to thank them and share that with you all. And Kristen Riker as well. She had over 20 years in public lands and parks and came over from the town before. But there's a lot of opportunity right now. You know, we have over 735 acres of parks throughout Salt Lake, over 91,000 trees. So it just kind of reinforces the general obligation bond that was passed in 2020 for public lands or for parks and public lands. While I'm saying that, also we have a feedback community page that's open right now. If you want to get on, put input into any of the construction improvements that public lands and parks are putting in. It's open. There's surveys. I know College Park has one right now. Or we just go on slc.gov and then put in the general obligation bond and then searching for feedback community, you know, they'll pull up all the surveys. Any other questions?
No, but I think that you were very discreet in not acknowledging that you did in the state legislature yourself. That's why you're so careful in describing the process. So I wasn't raising my hand, but you were, as usual, very self-effacing. But the reason he knows about all that is he wasn't.
So Brian Reed is our new chief of police.
Okay, earlier.
Oh,
I invited him last week and he showed up.
So we've already put words into him into his office to make sure that it gets out to the community councils. Central City's been one of the first because Brandy reached out to me as soon as Mayor considered. I sent out that email. We should have him at our community council.
Right. He gave me a cell phone and like messaged him.
Right.
Not reading.
There's a Living Traditions Festival that's coming up May 12, 13, 14. They're looking for volunteers. Want to get on their website. So it's right here in Library Square, Washington Square, or May 16, 17. But they're looking for volunteers. Got already. That's it, unless there's other questions for me. Oh, there was one more. I did want to pass around this QR code for, if you don't have recycling in your apartment, Department of Sustainability asked me to pass this around. To scan it, and then there's also a blood drive at St. Paul's Episcopal Church on the south and right east on April 2nd. From 12:30 to 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
So next we'll have Detective Stewart. She's online. And unmute and give us your update.
Okay, looks like I'm unmuted. Can you guys hear me?
Hang on.
All right, perfect. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here. I heard from Brandy that our new chief was able to meet some of you. We're very, very, very hopeful for our new chief. We've heard only really, really good things about him, honestly. He's very inquisitive and very involved in the community and wants to get to know everyone and extremely open to new ideas. So our police department is changing and has always been changing, it seems like, throughout the history of time, just rapidly. And we're always looking to the community because for ideas, because in the community is real life experience as to what is truly going on. So if we start with the level of actually what's going on, which is the community, and then we move to patrol, which are the people who respond to the community who calls, and then we go up from there, we'll truly be able to make a bigger and greater difference in everyone's lives. And I do believe that our new chief has that goal in mind, because I heard him say it today, where so much information comes from what you would typically think of a pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid is the foundational support, and without that support, nothing at the top could be upheld. So I love that concept, and I love the open communication. So here we go. In Central City, I looked up your crime statistics, and all I'm seeing is green. Green means you are down for crime, which is phenomenal. Having said that, um, with our last administration, and I think I spoke about this last month in our meeting, is that the police department in Central City, which you live, which is phenomenal. Our commander and lieutenant are committed to doing community-oriented policing projects every month, and not just the liaisons, but every squad that has a sergeant, which you have typically 2 or 3 per shift, and you have 3 shifts per day. Every squad will have a project to reach out to the community and interact with them in a positive way. So coming down the pipeline, we have several projects that are that have been done for January and December going back, and that are in the works for March. And I'm really, really excited. 2 of them are in Central City this month that I know of, and specifically in the Central City Community Council area. And so I'll be reaching out to your board of directors, for the community council to help you be aware of what we're doing and get the community involved, because that's where we know makes the biggest difference. Does anyone have any questions for me from the police department?
Randy has a question. Yeah, I've been trying to contact for a while, or email and text. How do you say his last name? TCYZ? How do you pronounce it? I can never say it. Ty?
Ties.
And then tell is, because I know Ty is tell is, you won't accept Ty is on the game squad, but I never get an email response back, so I'm not sure if he's getting things I sent him. The last message.
Sorry, you cut out.
I'm kind of important regarding some gay and drug stuff.
I know Ties and Tias, they have an influx of so much information every day as far as gang related information tips come in, and they are triaging those events. If you are not receiving a response, it doesn't mean that they aren't necessarily receiving the information. If you're not seeing them around, it doesn't mean that they aren't aware of the issues. It just means that they're triaging the issues around the city, because we have one gang unit for the entire city. It's not specifically for Central, and then we have a gang unit for Liberty and a gang unit for Pioneer, which is the west of the freeway. It's just that there's one gang unit which consists of one sergeant and 5 officers for the entire city. So they just know that your information is getting through. It's just it's maybe they're not responding, but they are getting it. So don't lose heart. And every information sent in is valuable.
Someone told me my messages or emails or something were going through, they looked weird or suspicious. I think it was mine, so you said your texts or your emails look funny, like it looks like an attachment or something. Have you noticed that for my messages or any sort of messaging for me? It looks like there's any
No,
security.
no, and I believe I responded to one of those emails with that same question and said there are some shared folders that our firewalls block, but the other folders do not block. And a basic email where you aren't sharing a folder from another avenue, a basic email that you send information from, directly to that email, it goes through, it's fine. But when you share a document through another avenue, sometimes our firewalls will block it.
Way of sending attachments.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of preferred thing for documents to go through, not Google Drive or some other way to send large documents or large?
Honestly, we use Outlook, but
The best way to save send
if you have evidence of crimes, then it would be an evidence link through Axon. But if you're sending documents with large like files to open, more likely than not, our firewalls are going to block it. So if it's evidence,
Sorry, thank you, Marie.
So we've got about 8 minutes. We need to hit community, our committee updates. We also have Ava who just joined us, and we have our heart team too. Why don't we hit heart team first?
Want to introduce Matt, introduce himself. He's our newest member of our team. He's the homeless strategies outreach supervisor. So yeah, we're really happy to have him. We're actually doing. Like homelessness. So when that's all over, I can try and give a summary. But yeah, if you have any questions about that specifically, feel free to grab me.
Thanks. Okay, and then I would say quick committee updates before Ava. If that sounds good, Ava. We'll do some committee updates and then turn it over to you.
Yeah, not a problem. I was gonna say I just want to highlight Katie's message online. It is a bit quiet. I don't know if the internet's going in and out, but it's very difficult to hear if there's any questions coming from the audience.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Does this sound better? Can you guys
Yeah.
hear it better?
Yeah, we can hear very clearly now.
Can you comment or respond if it sounds better? I might just stick my laptop up there. Okay, well let's do our quick committee updates. So let's start. Can we start with land use? Frank, is that okay? You guys haven't met Frank. Frank's volunteered to be our land use committee chair. And so anytime we get a proposal for a rezone in the neighborhood or some kind of code change, we get a letter from the city. And so Frank's going to be reviewing all of those and then gathering your input, your feedback on these proposals, and then sending a letter back. So you want to talk about what's going on in your world?
Yeah, so I, just started this, still getting my bearings, but the first step has been ultimately getting the tracker so that we can actually keep track of when we need to be responding to these to these proposals, and then, ultimately, my goal would be a simplified way that we can get responses and opinions from the community as well, so. That might be a survey among years, we'll figure out exactly what that looks like, but that's my goal.
I have like one question, so. For planning commission, if Center City Neighborhood Council has an assigned representative, that representative can speak 5 minutes on each topic as opposed to 2, because they're representing the committee. So I'd like to talk to you after I'd like to find a way for us to have, and this is something that Cindy brought, educated me on, that we have a representative, even if it's not the same one, at each planning commission, to take advantage of those 5 minutes on topics that affect our neighborhood.
Another thing I would say is if you want to help with this land use committee, you should talk with Frank. Our idea is that each committee is made up of neighbors who care about this certain topic, whether it be land use, or maybe someone starts a parks committee, or there's a public safety one. That's a great way to get involved. So if you're interested in one of these committees, I want them to talk to the committee lead after and see how you two can coordinate. So thanks, Frank. Move on to public safety. Randy, any updates?
As we mentioned, the chief came by the board meeting earlier, so he's very interested and communicative and working to help with the issues that exist in the neighborhood and the parks, which will undoubtedly increase, when the weather gets better, we can see things going on. So I want to encourage people to, if you see something, I know it's time consuming sometimes, please call it in, please submit it through the app. It all adds up and it makes a difference, so they can focus their squads and their divisions, all their, resources into the areas that are it's needed the most. It's see, this is why I don't like public speaking, but yeah, so anyone that wants to be involved in the public safety, I want some people that would like to consistently work with me in regards to stuff before the meetings, do some litter walks, and then some crime prevention stuff. And we do plan on having a meeting with the new chief, with the other councils, maybe like Amy and Christine and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff I have in mind and planned. I just haven't organized it all yet. And that's why my whole process is
Thanks, Brandy. And then, so for transportation committee, Troy is not here, but like Tim said, the state legislature is trying to put a 1 year to 1.5 year pause on all traffic calming projects in Salt Lake City, specifically on collector and arterial streets. And it just so happens that almost every street in Central City is a collector or arterial street. And so that would delay progress for quite a while. And so if tomorrow this bill still hasn't passed yet, we'll send out another newsletter with Sweet Streets, encouraging you to contact legislators to allow Salt Lake City to continue with traffic calming projects. So Troy's working really hard on that. He's staying on top of it, and we hope that that gets taken out of the notification. That ends Friday. Yes. So we got to go. Any other? Okay.
like the statements regarding social media.
So if you have any tips, interesting things that happen in the neighborhood, maybe your neighbors had a party, maybe you did a service project, send that information our way. You can just reply to our newsletters. We get emails in that email address. You can send the info our way and listen to post it. Thank you guys. Let's move on to our next thing, which is the J. Fisher project. Sorry.
Thanks. I was gonna say, wait. No, I apologize. Like, I can't be there. I'm stuck in my office, but I wanted to really quick highlight some of the major news that I'm sure some of you tuned in for. Nope, I'm not muted. Can you hear me okay? Hello? Can you hear me okay?
No, she's.
Hello?
Hello?
Test.
Oh, you know what? I just have to use my computer speaker. Okay, go ahead now. We can hear you.
Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I was saying, sorry I can't be there. I'm at my office. I got behind in work, so I needed to catch up real quick. But I wanted to let you know some of the two major installations of department leaders within the city. I'm sure some of you saw in the news, but I just want to highlight again, we took our vote to confirm our new public lands director, Kim Shelley. I'm very, very excited with her. She's got a breadth of experience in scientific research, but also has really great operational and fiduciary oversight capacity, which is really exciting. She has stated on the record that she is for public-private partnerships, which will help us as a city overcome some of our capital gaps that we still have. We've passed the GEO bond and passed other fee increases citywide to help fund our projects for our parks. Unfortunately, there's still huge gaps. So super, super excited for that, as well as an incentive to overcome the challenges of watering our public trees and also ensuring the responsible property owners water their trees and as well as the use of green spaces and combining them so that way we have good access to both natural and urban landscapes in our city. So very excited by that. I'm meeting with her on Friday to talk about our pocket parks in particular. So super, super excited to overcome some of those challenges. And then, of course, we confirmed our new police chief, Brian Redd. I do want to highlight, I'll be posting this on social media. I asked him 3 questions, one related to our PCRT and alternative policing models, and what that might look like in a world where you can't police your way out of crime. I mean, it's just a fact. And as well as how he will serve our residents in respect to our constitutional freedoms. And other questions related to overcoming the challenges that we see with mass gatherings. A mass gathering is anything, I might get this wrong, but if I remember correctly, it's anything above 20 people in a gathered space is considered a mass gathering by definition. It actually might be less than that. It might be 10. But in short, thinking about not just protests or different shared rights, but also thinking about Olympic gatherings and mass gatherings with related to our sports economy and entertainment economies in downtown, making sure that the safety of our residents is paramount, regardless of the experience of it. So you can look at those answers yourself. I have yet to work with him, but I feel confident that we will overcome our public safety challenges that this community has cited. Our job is now to make sure that those that we overcome some of those symptoms and experiences with the utmost dignity, and as well as not to continue to overburden and encumber our policing efforts and judicial systems. We know that we cannot arrest our way out of this problem, so it is nice to see that Brian accepts that fact. I think he's going to be an important cog in communicating with the state. Now, I want to talk just really briefly about the state legislation, SB 195 and HB 465. SB 195, we're lobbying really hard to overcome some of these moratorium challenges on our road taxation. Taxation in this state is a joke. I'm gonna say it like this. They are taking Salt Lake taxpayer money and leveraging it for developers, extreme development related to, it's beyond sports arenas. The Miller family, I'm going to put this on the record, LHM in their bill is going to get the allowance of taking Fair Park Stadium, so what would come out of their MLB development into their other projects around the state, in particular one in Sandy. So to me, this is we should be, it's not just grotesque, it's a gross overuse and abuse of Salt Lake City citizen-based taxpayer dollars. So I let our lobbying team know if this thing passes, we might have the opportunity to cut taxes in our city. I'm saying that early now because I'm going to wait to see what our finance department says. But I don't know about you, but it is becoming such a burden to be the capital city for the rest of the state that I want to ensure that our people can afford to stay here. And it is not fair that Salt Lake City taxpayer funds are going to be possibly outsourced to other development projects that are not in Salt Lake City. So that is not economic development, nor is it responsible. So we'll be fighting that till the very end. It ends on Friday, but this is the countdown to the worst of the worst bills. So we have hope. We have interim session. I do want to let you all know our team is busy trying to delay these bills from passing so that we can have good conversations with legislators that have that don't understand the capacity, whether it's a bonding capacity of the city or just our economic capacity to create sales tax base. Any questions before I move on from that? I know that's a lot to digest, but we don't know what'll pass yet until we reach Friday. So um, I want to move on. I'm really excited though by some of the policies and changes. I want to invite you all on Friday. Cold Plunge Coffee is opening up on 475 East, 300 South. We just approved an EDLF loan fund for them. So you can come grab craft coffee while also jumping into the cold plunge and being mindful and experienced. So I'm super, super excited by that. I think we've had a really good year of small businesses opening up in Central City. So really happy to see these spaces being utilized. As well as I've had the opportunity to meet with more neighbors in regards to our zoning consolidation for ARMA 35 and 45. I've also met with the planning department. I'm waiting on a pro forma to give feedback. I think there's both, we recognize a need for density, but also we want to recognize that what we displaced today and what is being, the supply that's being built is not economically providing the same price point. It usually doubles at market rate. And so I just want to be cognizant that whatever is being built, although it is has more supply, is not reducing the cost or the impact and burden to that renter. And then again, as I've mentioned, constantly expanding those homeownership opportunities, which feels great. Fun policy that the city just got briefed on is actually our parental leave policy for recovery leave for the parent or the individual that gave birth, and also bonding leave for the parent or individual that wants to take advantage of bonding with their child. And so really trying to approach this internally so our city employees can come in and invest fully, as well as so they can invest fully in their careers in Salt Lake City Corporation, but also trying to attract those families that we want working for our city. So super, super excited for that.
Thanks, Ava. Gotta move along unless you have any other pressing announcements.
Nope, unless there's any questions. That's great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ava. Thanks for always being here. Okay, next up, they purchased, did you buy the Jewish temple or just the land next to it? So they bought it's called the Benai Israel Temple on 400 East between 2nd South and 3rd South, and are partnering with a museum for creators in that museum and build a multifamily project in the parking lot next to it. They're here to talk about it.
Thanks. Go to slide 9. Start. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come and tell you a little bit more about our project. Yeah, that's fine. We've been working on this project for a little over 2 years, and it's actually a joint venture project with two other owners, one of which was the prior owner of the synagogue. This building back here is called Bonneville Apartments. And we built that building probably 7 years ago. And back behind this property, we had an asphalt parking lot, probably 30 spaces that were hardly ever used. And over here at the temple, they had a big asphalt parking lot that was rarely, if ever, used, right? They maybe had 10 to 12 cars per day in that parking lot. So we went to them and said, if we were to combine our two parking lots, we could create something really unique in the community. Some multifamily housing, but paying homage to the synagogue. So we bought the synagogue We since sold it to a company that is going to do museum as well as an art gallery. And the museum really is focused on Jewish art. So again, I met with maybe, did I meet with some of you earlier at the synagogue? Yeah, last year we had a small informal meeting to talk about our plans for this property. And it's interesting, out of all the 50 states, Utah ranks 48 with the number of museums in the state. So it's nice to be able to have something dedicated right next door that doesn't exist in Utah. It would be a really cool museum once it's maybe go back to slide one. I'll give you an idea of what we have planned for the project.
Say slide one.
Slide one, yeah, sorry. So what we tried to do is create something that had never been done in downtown. Greenwood. Something that doesn't look like a cookie cutter, run-of-the-mill apartment community, but something that is as unique as the synagogue right next to it. So we tried to incorporate a lot of the same features and architectural elements that would complement the temple. Not necessarily overburden it or run afoul of its current design. So this is really what you're seeing here. What is nice too is you notice that the top of the temple, that's really high. But our building isn't that much higher than the top of it. So it doesn't, the massing isn't too overpowering sitting right next to it. Next slide. Oh, sorry, can I do that maybe? I'm happy to come up.
Oh,
So, and what we wanted to do too is it's really important for us, because we don't have a lot of street frontage, is we wanted to incorporate something that would be private, but also public for people who wanted to come up and down the street, perhaps come through this little park-like setting, have benches to sit on, etc. That could be enjoyed by the patrons of the synagogue, as well as people who might want to frequent our property. So we actually have an easement to control all of this area, so it always looks really nice. Next slide. Another front view of what's planned. We have 119 units in this project. The top floor, actually 2 floors, are amenity spaces. In the middle courtyard area back here, we also have some additional amenity spaces for the residents. And interrupt me, you have questions, you go on.
I know you're not gonna like this question.
Oh, I'm not Larry Steele.
You're an art, you have the art gallery.
We don't own the art gallery.
Okay.
We just sold.
Oh, okay. Any thought of, and I know there's problems with it, making them condominiums instead of apartments, so people could have an opportunity to buy them?
We've explored that a lot. One of the difficulties we have as a developer is condominiums come with a lot of baggage, in the sense that once we build it, sell it, 9 times out of 10, the HOA sues the developer. And I know that there's legislation perhaps it's being talked about right now that may shield the developer from some of that liability. But inevitably, that's one of the things that developers don't want to do, because they don't want to be sued. It's a lot easier for us to own it, run it, maintain it, manage it. We do have a lot of projects in the downtown area that we do sell, but it's usually a townhome product, not necessarily.
So is the central arch, is that the entrance for parking?
Yeah, so this would be the in-out.
That's most unfortunate. That's typically what we have with a gaping maw for cars across the front side.
A gaping what?
Maw, now.
Oh.
So anything you can do to diminish that, lighting it, putting the name there and everything just draws attention to the fact that that's where the cars go. And if people live there, they know where the cars go. They don't have to have a
Yeah.
I mean, we saw this with the building that's, over on Fifties, between Fifties, so it's new housing, currently called MODA. Was called the, but at any rate, parking structure is right in the middle, the parking access, it's just not consistent with anything historic. I understand you need to get the cars in and you don't want to put the driveway down the side of the building, but anything you can do to minimize that and highlight what is, what that front facade says to me is, you're welcome into your car, figure it out if you want to.
Yeah.
That's what it tells you.
You mentioned it. One of the difficulties with this site is the narrowness of what we have to work with. And we actually have an application in to the Historic Landmarks Commission who may have very similar comments. We don't know quite yet, but we'll certainly take that in.
Put the sign over the people, not the cars. The cars don't read.
I mean, do you own the driveway on the north side of the synagogue?
We do not.
Is that a nationally historic building or a local?
It is. I think it's, I don't know for sure, but there's a plot. Okay, there you go.
It's both on the national register. It's both. Okay.
Part of the reason why they're forgiving for the tonight is that they're part of the property. There's part of the landmark site, originally part of the night is really cool. But the actual front of the building is not considered to be a landmark.
We chose it, yeah. Yeah, we actually chose to try and bring a lot of the architectural features to complement it from behind it. We wanted to bring it.
Say that the top of the synagogue was high, but the building was not so much higher. And so I wonder if that's a true ratio that I'm looking at there, because that their window is a lot higher, possibly double the size.
I think Luke has that. Maybe you can look at that while we know the heights from that submission.
Yeah, so the building height is 85 feet, is what we submitted, but the top of the dome is about 70 to 70 feet.
Okay, so this is maybe disproportionate.
Yeah, it could just be the view of the rendering that kind of makes it look like that. But if you were, I mean, if you were on the street face right in front of both buildings, you would really see how big each one is. That makes sense. Like the synagogue would look.
When you fix that?
When you go before the landmarks.
You look familiar with the
Yes, I also. When you go before the landmarks, are you, if they express similar concerns to what they expressed about the driveway, is there an alternative that you're looking at for the driveway, for figuring out different placements or a different way to emphasizing the gaping car mall? Because like in general, like they appreciate the density. I live right next door. This is very exciting.
Yeah. We haven't explored any of those alternatives. What we tried to do is make it as attractive as possible, because it is, like you said, it's not, we don't want this to have necessarily be the focal point. We tried to dress it up a little bit so it wasn't industrial looking, but it was warm and welcoming. You notice some of the lighting we have in there. You're right, we probably don't have to brand it here and brand it here and brand it here. We can make it a little less, a little more nondescript.
Maybe if it was some kind of fancy wrought iron articulate, gate that it was enclosed instead of the stainless, steel, it might look less.
There are certain things that we have to meet as far as code is concerned, but appreciate it.
And the only, so what I saw this previously online, my initial comment was, and I know you have a narrow sight to deal with, trying to get as much done, but it would be nicer that instead of being a rectangle, gradually stepped away from the synagogue elevation towards the street rather than being fully up to the street because it casts a shadow on the building. Just something that.
I see what you're saying. I understand.
Yeah, and
Yeah, given where the sun will be oriented, it will probably be in the shadow,
yeah.
so. Another night view. Go ahead.
That was actually a good angle of it. I was curious about the space between the temple and the apartment. What's the intended use for the space?
Yeah, we actually, consideration of what will be occurring here in the way of events, we've actually created space that could be used by both properties. So it can overflow from their property and our property is kind of a park-like setting. They have showing or an exhibit. They might be able to bring pieces out into the courtyard area, but this would be a courtyard shared by both.
So in effect, it's not one property, it's gonna be considered two properties, one museum, one apartment.
Right.
And is the museum being run by the gentleman that owns the antique?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, just up the street. View. Sorry if I'm moving that. Oh, this is an interesting view too. This might help show that courtyard a little easier. What we did is we took the synagogue and removed it from the picture to show what's happening down that side yard. Just gives you a little different perspective. Couldn't see with the synagogue.
Are there entrances on the synagogue, on that side?
There's one.
Like, it seems like it's shown to be a very lively space right now. But on the apartment side, that's parking, right?
It is parking in here, but we have access to that area as well as the synagogue having access. And that was the intent. We wanted to have activated spaces, not something that was collecting leaves or debris or just a problem area. We wanted people to be there.
Is the thinking that patrons of the museum would park in the parking lot of the building?
Yes, absolutely. Again, you guys saw this, it gives you kind of an aerial perspective of what we have planned in the way of parking and just generally a site plan. Good. Landscaping. Again, kind of what we have planned in the way of benches, seating in that central plaza area up front. That's it. There you go. Thanks again.
So what approvals do you have to get from the city as a historic landmarks approval? Is that what it is?
There's a historic landmarks approval and that has a 45-day period. They are also using city information and so with that, they're to reduce the rear yard setback. And then as a result of reducing the rear yard setback, moving the building back from the street so that it has kind of a little bit of step back. We don't have to hold it further step back from the building. And then as part of that, to get that request, it needs to go to administrative development. The provisions for that are the incentives application. And then they are 85 feet. For that.
So it's the zoning requirements different because basically you're taking the new building, putting it next to a building and theoretically the same owners covered, as opposed to if there were two different properties.
A little bit, mostly it's just, mostly they have some modifications that can be made for the part that's considered historic, but, the other part is not reviewed that way. The ownership, they're resolving that mostly through easements and agreements that they have with each other. As opposed to part of
Can I take this one off?
Well, sure, yeah, we want to have Cindy come up and talk to us about the RMF 35 to 45 zoning merger. She has approximately 8 minutes and then some time for questions. Well, 8 to 9 minutes. Okay. And then the rest for some questions.
Planning department and some.
Well, just Cindy, we invited the planning department. They felt like that they provided enough information last month. Thank you so much for your presentation.
It was actually January.
Oh, January, thank you.
And I asked if they wanted to stay. Okay, so I think that I have. No. Okay, I look on the video, but- Well,
8 to 9 minutes for your presentation. Let's see. We have 15 minutes total.
okay, that's what you told me, and then I looked at the agenda and thought it was different. Well, I don't know what we'll get through, but I wanted to start with the story. An incredibly complicated proposal that has a huge impact on Central City, on our entire neighborhood. This is a map of the entire neighborhood, and you can see that where they attach lots, those are condos. And one of the things this project has failed to do is take into account the condominiums in our neighborhood, and that they're not going to redevelop again. Doesn't matter whether they're going at 35 or 45, they're not going anywhere. They are locked in time. They are the best preserved structures in our neighborhood. So it's a very complicated proposal. Chrissy Gilmore, bless her, was here in January. The planners are at the Greater Avenues Community Council tonight, and it's on the Planning Commission's hearing scheduled for next Wednesday. I hope some of you will come, because the boards for both Capitol Hill Neighborhood Council and the Greater Avenues meet on the same night as the Planning Commission. Anyway, so let me start this story, because trying to have zoning ordinance is like sitting down and reading phone book if you can find one. So this story starts about 35 years ago, and a planner named Doug Zanke working on the East Downtown Master Plan, which is the northern area of America. And he did research on census data, and he found out that people living in the neighborhood had greatly decreased in numbers, and Main Street was dying at the time. And one of the reasons Main Street was dying was because there were not enough people living in the East Downtown to support the businesses on Main Street. So the city had this view, this was particularly Vern Wilkinson, then the planning director. The city had this view that there would be like this office park between downtown and the university. And so it allowed office buildings in what were the high density residential zones. And sometimes we would get a big office building, and sometimes we would get a 1 or 2 story office building, but we lost residents in the north end of Central City through that process. So at the same time this was going on, the people in the south end of the neighborhood, down here on 6 East, Scott Larson and the Norrises decided that they were going to initiate a historic. And they were going to focus on 6 East and connect the South Temple District, which had already been formed, and Liberty Park, which was a standalone district. So the historic district would run between those two existing districts, and that would kind of capitalize on the interest in the neighborhood and mobilize people and energize the neighborhood. So those two things were going on as the city was trying to rewrite the zoning ordinance. And I'm finally getting to the point of the story. The zoning ordinance created the RMF 35 and big problems with this proposal is that the areas that have been zoned, both 35 and 45, are not consistent. So you may have a whole block that's zoned RMF 35, and they're all different sizes, masses, and heights of buildings on that block. There's not consistency, whether the zoning is 45 or 35, there's just not consistency, unless you get into the transit corridor, and then everybody's maxed out about it. And all you got left is right, and building. So, there are definitely problems in these zones, and it wasn't until a few years ago, I have to tell you, it wasn't until a few years ago, I sat down with the planner, worked on the rezoning in 95, and I was convinced that they had done the King Solomon thing, and they had tried to split the difference and come up with some middle ground with all of this heterogeneity in the zoning. The planner said to me, no, we knew we couldn't get design review past the mayor. And so a workaround was to make development, redevelopment really difficult. Well, they succeeded because they required a minimum of 50-foot lot width, and we have old historic lot, sizes that are less than 50 feet. And then that was a big part of it. And then you also had to have street frontage. You had to go through another process. So these zones that they created in 1995, 30 years later, have not generated a lot of new development. And so the planner's task has been to figure out how are we going to get more housing in there than we've done in the last 30 years, because hardly anything has happened. And a big part of that is that you have to have a big lot, and you have to have a wide lot to redevelop. And the lots aren't that wide, and they're not that big. Typically mine are like a big one would be a fifth of an acre. And you have, most of mine are fairly wide. Yeah.
So, first of all, there was a miscommunication. You have till 7:15 to do your presentation.
Okay.
The rest is.
Okay, so what time is it?
It's 7:03. But my next question is, okay, so I'm not very familiar with planning and zoning. So what are the key differences between RMF 35 and 40?
Well, the height, but what I'm trying to communicate is that it's not about 10 feet, because a lot of the buildings in our neighborhood are not 35 feet. Some of them are 15 feet because they're single family residences, or some of them are 35 feet because they're two-story multiple unit buildings like 5-plexes and 4-plexes. So we have all of this diversity in our neighborhood, and you can't assume that the buildings in the zone are already 35 feet tall. So let me just go to some pictures for everyone to explain. What do I do? Oh, just that, just like mine. All right, this is the quintessential view of, on a very cloudy day, of part of the Central City Historic. This is 3rd South, which is a fabulous street, looking east from 60. It's in the historic district. The buildings are all 2-story. Most of them are, well, almost all of them are 2-story. Most of them have multiple units. Some of them are single family. And this is the picture that always, oops, that was wrong. Oh, I'll scroll up. Okay, so this is the picture that always shows up in the Tribune for the north end of the neighborhood and south end of the neighborhood at 60, looking south from the south. So here's the other end, and you can see that the building that's being renovated right now on the far right is actually a single family residence, maybe 1.5 stories tall. And this is jumping a neighborhood, but I want to show you what a multiple unit building that is 1.5 stories tall looks like next to a 45-foot tall building. We have one of these, and I'll show you the one. It's a 45-foot tall building built in the late 70s. It has a 20-foot setback. No one is talking about that kind of setback now, next to historic properties.
So is the setback from the street? Is that what it is?
It could be the front yard, it could be the side yard.
Or
it
the
could be
side,
rear yard.
okay.
So the last project we told, the guy was talking about a reduction in the rear yard setback. This is looking between the buildings of that multiple unit property for the 45 feet. And that is right over our boundary in the Bryant neighborhood. And this is really interesting. Almost this entire block is an RMF 45. This huge condo project is 2.5 stories tall. It does not probably even get past 35. It's zoned RMF 45 as a condo project always in state, absent fire or an earthquake. So this is the twin, actually the triplet of the stucco building. There were 3 of them built in the late 70s, and this one is like the one you saw before, 45 feet tall. Again, this is huge 20-foot setback. It's not a big problem to the north of the historic building. There's a huge setback. What happens though, this is the streetscape across the street. You get down, to this end, and you have a 1-story office building. And that is a prime candidate for redevelopment. And on this street, this is 6 east between 2nd and 3rd south. You've got 1-story historic buildings, you've got 2-story historic buildings. None of those can be torn down, but the office building can. And that could redevelop to a much greater height and density. And it would not fit, in my opinion. So this is the streetscape. I don't know how to do this fancy stuff, but I had an architect do this. Over here is the 45-foot building, then the big, huge setback right here. And then consistently, these historic buildings are between 33 and 35 feet. Okay, they are not exceeding the height limit in the zone. You get to this is the oldest thing on the block. And it predates the Sanborn maps in 1888. And then you have this very large multiple unit building next to it that is a whopping 27 feet tall. It's actually lower than the historic buildings which grew. And then you go skip over a couple more. This is single family, multiple unit. And you get to one that's 15 feet tall. So what the city's project suggests is that they're only asking for 10 units. They're not really asking for 10 more units because the existing height is not 35 feet. It's sometimes 15 feet or less. And some of the buildings that would get replaced are 25 feet. And you can see from the outline how high they might go. And I think that's the last one. So the issue is how to add density to a historic neighborhood. My belief, because I have 5 buildings in the RMF 35, is that I can't demolish. And the city is trying to urge people to retain their existing buildings by giving them density bonuses, extra units. But they're giving me so many, I can't. So I went in with the triplex and they said, you can have 3 more. I can't put 3 more on the property. I went in with a 6-plex and it said, you can have 6 more. That I can't put 6 more. There is no what's called a transfer of development rights that would allow me to take those units that the city is going to give me and put them somewhere else. There's no such tool in Salt Lake City. So I'm focused on the historic district because if I do have 2 buildings outside of the historic district in the RMF 35, and I want to play development the way the city is outlining it, I can demolish them and I can rebuild. And that is the reasonable thing for me to do, given how many units the city is going to give me, the depreciation that I've almost exhausted on buildings, and the age of the buildings. Tear them down and rebuild. In the historic district, I can't do that. And so I'm trying to figure out how to juggle my personal values with historic preservation, my business values, which are separate, and the city's new one. And as I said to Chrissy Gilmore, when she was here, this doesn't work. I can't take advantage, same way someone can, who has a non-contributory building like this or this. I can't demolish. Actually, if you know me, you know I don't want to. But the whole redevelopment thing, and I talked to a developer today who started in about the utility and how much the utility could cost with an increased density of recycling. So that's kind of it. I do want to know that we don't have a lot of RMF 45 in our neighborhood. I told this now that Aaron Barlow, who's handling the project, generated. It didn't exist before I asked for it. You can come up afterwards and look. You can see how the RMF 45 is. Here are the numbers, and then I'll shut up. There are a total in our neighborhood of 52 blocks of residential. I've taken out Liberty Park and the City and County Building. So we've got 52 blocks. And of those 52 blocks, there are 11 blocks that contain at least one parcel of RMF. And one of those blocks only contains blocks. So we're not talking about a zone that's all over the place in our neighborhood. We have very diverse zoning, but the streetscape that I showed you is RMF 35, except for this big building up in the corner, which is zoned RMF 40. The whole streetscape, turn the corner and you go down that iconic streetscape, all RMF 40. So anyway, anybody have any questions on this stuff?
So, when the planning department discusses this proposal, they talk about how few existing buildings in this area are actually compliant. I don't remember what the exact number is. See if I can pull it up. It's 4% of units have been turned over since these regulations were adopted, and
That doesn't.
47% of lots are too small to accommodate the current regulations.
Right. There's no question that that's a problem. I'll give you an example. I have a fifth of an acre and 5 units recognized by the city on it as RMF 35. And if I were to tear that building down under the current rules, I would get 2. If I upzone to RMF 45, I would still get 2 units. I have 5. What am I going to do? I'm going to take really good care of that building. What I'm going to do. So there is a problem. My argument is that this is hugely overkill. It's very lucrative if you are in a position to demolish. If you're not in a position to demolish, I said to somebody in planning staff, I think I should be treated better as the owner of a contributory building, but I will not be treated worse. If you're going to treat me fairly, okay, I'll deal with that. And all the regulations that come with having a contributory structure. But I will not be treated worse. And that's what I think is happening.
I mean, isn't that the risk that you take on when you purchase property? That like we live in a city, we live in a farm that has a diversity. We live in a city that has a diversity of forms and diversity of ages. And ultimately, you're very lucky you own buildings. And unfortunately, some of those might have, certain restrictions placed on them for the social good.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't allow additional growth elsewhere.
It's fine if it's elsewhere. I just don't want it next to my 2-story building. I'm just fine. I know what life is like to have a 45-foot building with a 20-foot setback on the north side of me. And I'm not interested in being walled in by larger buildings on all sides of me. And I have a property on Canyon Road in City Creek Park where that could happen. I have non-contributory buildings uphill and down the street from me, and I could literally be walled in on the block.
That's what living in the city is like.
Well, I guess so. And then I can sell my buildings, I can displace the tenants because they will not get comparable rents from any other. And I can throw in the towel. I'm choosing to stand my ground and say, I'm in a historic district, it's been a historic district since 1991. I have reason to expect that the contributory status will be treated with respect rather than additional bureaucracy and discrimination. That's where I am. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to say too, like, and this is why we're here discussing this tonight. What do we want to see in the Central City neighborhood? And do we value historical buildings? And we want to keep those or know that, is the look and feel of our neighborhood going to change? So that's why we're having this discussion tonight. We want to know what is the neighborhood? And we should take a stance on that.
Just have a quick thing. Sure. So when I've heard the pitch from the planning department when they're saying that it's a problem that only 4% of these properties are turned over. To me, I don't see that as a problem because there's just so much land that can be redeveloped in Salt Lake City. We've got parking lots downtown. We've got entire neighborhoods like the Granary that are just ripe for redevelopment. And so, I don't see if the RMO 35 and 45 is not turning over and there's already like good stock of missing middle housing, I don't see it as a problem that it's stayed the same for decades.
So at any rate, the boards for the Greater Avenues and Local Open Meeting and Capitol Hill are meeting next Wednesday. The planning commission is meeting next Wednesday. Their meeting is hearing. It's the first item on the hearing agenda. So there's a consent item ahead of that, and then so if you go at 5:30 to the city and county building on the 3rd floor, you don't have to wait around next week. And they do need to hear from us. I have, as you can tell, pretty much dug in. I spoke last night to the city council. The community benefit that was crafted after the Pride in Place and the affordable housing project goes away. It doesn't apply. There is no requirement unless you go to 45 feet to provide affordable housing at all. The opportunities for family-oriented housing, accessible housing, and affordable housing do not apply at 45 feet or less. You have to go to 50 feet to have an requirement for affordable housing, and it still doesn't do anything for family-oriented housing or accessible. There are types of housing that the market is not going to provide, and this proposal bypasses the one tool we have to try to get those in new development, and that is community benefit. And so it just astonishes me that the city would adopt such a wide sweeping citywide change and then dismiss the tool that they just created like a year ago. That there is no community benefit required.
I mean, aren't there density bonuses?
That's for the developer.
Well, no, like density bonuses, like you could build more units if you build more.
Right, you have to get to 45 feet before there's only a density bonus between here and here.
I want to make a comment that people move to different cities and towns for different reasons, and usually has to do a lot with the aesthetic that they feel comfortable. I know a lot of people like Salt Lake City because there's a lot of sunlight and there's a lot of green space and there's a mixture of historic and modern. And I think we really have to be careful as a city if we pull out the zoning that people are guaranteed as landowners when they buy a property and pull it out from under them to turn the city upside down from a city of multiple different kinds of neighborhoods and qualities to a one-size-fits-all. Every opportunity we're going to stick a dense high-rise building, no matter who we're next to get as high density as we can, because cities have cycles, and when you get that way at a certain point, they become vacant cities because they're not livable, there's no sunlight, they're not safe. And
I think we have to be really careful about a new zoning turning our city upside down.
Do you think that New York City is applicable?
You know what, a lot of people point to New York City as, oh, you don't want to repeat that, so, yeah, and if you can help by my accent, I have like a lifetime of experience in that area of the country.
I mean, what else? Boston, like, Salt Lake.
So if anybody has any questions, good chance I can't answer it, but I will get the answer. We now have a land use committee, so you can funnel your information to, I think, the email address for the community council, and then it'll go to Frank. I'm gonna move on to other historic neighborhoods because I see the impact on my rights as being greatest there. I'm not interested in displacing my tenants and demolishing my buildings that are outside the historic district, but I have that option. I don't have, my only option in the historic district if something goes up that I feel infringes on the historic character is to sell. So I'm not interested in doing it. At any rate, that's the project. The next meeting with the city is next Wednesday at 5:30 at the King County Building. And I don't know how many people will show up. There are two members of the commission. They are the two longest serving members of the commission who raised big concerns about this project. So,
Yeah, I guess I'm curious about, I'm thinking about the comment from developer earlier this evening. I can't do condominiums because HOAs will sue me. And then there's concern here about, not in my backyard, I want density with somewhere else, and I totally hear that. What are there policy solutions that we can be fighting for as a community council that would promote more missing middle? I'm thinking about my block that has, for both north and south of me, there's empty properties that haven't been developed for 3 years, and if I understand the planning department's argument, it's because they can't yet, because it's not worth it under the current zone. I could be wrong.
there's one example up in the avenues of a 49.5-foot wide lot that can't be developed. It's vacant. Give me a break. You can't figure out how to get around 6 inches. That's absurd. That's just absurd. I have added, without disrupting the fabric of my buildings or the streetscape in any way, 3 units on my own, unsubsidized. They are all highly affordable. They are lovely. Why did I do that? Because it was a good use of the space, because I knew that people would like being. The city doesn't provide incentives for the redevelopment of parking lots or one-story office buildings. It's, I feel, picking on our historic districts, which have a high frequency of RMF 35 zoning, to create this additional housing when there are other spaces that they could focus on, and they could fix the 6-inch problem. Oh my gosh. That's just, it's like they created a problem over 6 inches. Could you just say, there's some forgiveness here, go ahead and do something with 46.5 feet? So in the historic districts, there is relief for some of those requirements, but not block relief. So you can get relief from setbacks and height in the historic district, but not block. So the lot width is a huge problem. Street frontage is a huge problem. There's a requirement that you have to have street. That's a huge problem. But this is going way, way beyond the scope of the problem, in my opinion, and trying to put increased density. And I'm not a newbie. Listen, I can show you the difference in the performance of a 6-plex versus a 4-plex. And if you ask me if I'm going to buy anything, the answer is no at my age. But I've also not considered buying anything that was fewer units than 6. And I would prefer to have the derelict Normandy Chateau that sits burned, in the east downtown, then all of my smaller buildings would be a lot easier to manage. So I'm not opposed to density, I'm all in favor. I just don't want someone else's density to wreck my investment. And I want to have access to that same, incentive. And I don't, so, anyway, that's it, I have a couple of maps right here, I'm happy to walk on the street if I want to talk more, and then extricate myself and the sport before I go. And in case you will.
Cindy, thank you so much for the perspective. Helping learn more.
So, just last thing, I think, one thing that, you know, as we're talking about increased housing supply, I think we can all celebrate that so much housing has been built in Salt Lake City. I forget what the statistics are and how many units have been built, but it's been so much that rents have dropped. The market rent has dropped between 7 and 8% over the last year, just because so much supply has hit the market, and there's still so much in the pipeline, and there's still so much land to redevelop. And so there's a lot of room for housing, which is great. And I think celebrate the more people are moving into the neighborhood. So it's always a balancing act. You know, do we want to demolish historic buildings for housing? It's a balancing act we have to follow.
To clarify, this proposal would not allow for the demolition of historic buildings, that's part of the concern, correct?
Well, I think what we.
Because she owns property in the historic district, that's why she can.
Right, and also, I think what we're seeing in Central City is the delisting of the three-story buildings. We lost 2 of them that were mid-century buildings in the 70s. And we're gonna lose more for the expansion of Trolley Square. And so our buildings that's deemed contributory gets delisted through an administrative process, by the way, not a public. And then it can be demolished. So I think that there will be a lot of pressure with all of these incentives to get contributory buildings off the ground, to get them straight, so that they have a bigger parcel. I think there will be a lot of pressure on buildings that have compromised.
And some of those buildings, like those 3 that you mentioned at Trolley Square, they want to build on, they're in really bad shape. Like they're a blight on their block. Like, so I would say that some are. I don't know.
Well,
it's a difficult,
yeah. So you need to look at who's owned them for years. So.
Okay. Thanks, Cindy. So just one last announcement, Next month, we're going to get a special tour of the library rooftop. So the library here has built a new park, a small park on the roof, and the director of the library, Salt Lake City Library Network, will give us a personal tour of it. And so you want to be in person for that meeting. Don't come virtually. It's going to suck a little bit virtually. First Wednesday of next month, if I get over. Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
So thanks everybody.
Oh, I have two things. I forgot this. So that's the beginning. Liberty Wells, the construction is beginning, and they're happy to have a site there, which is ahead of schedule for spring and
So this is
summer.
the Liberty Wells Center. This is 4th East, 7th South.
Yeah, it's been vacant for several years while it's been pending permitting. And then also the 438 East Old Church Building, you might have mentioned before,
7th South.
has a new purchaser. He took us on a tour inside, and he has actually renovated it to his own personal home duplex. And he's going to post and have a YouTube channel with kind of updates on his progress. I think I'll get that to you. I don't think I have it yet. So
Yeah,
we'll follow along.
we'll send that out in the newsletter. It's really exciting. It's really exciting. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Still.